La Belle Époque, a prestigious restaurant in the heart of the city, hides a sinister secret beneath its luxurious facade. An intricate network of corruption and racial discrimination led by its powerful owner, Victor Hale. FBI agent Kyla Mitchell, an expert in fighting corruption and injustice, infiltrates one of Hale's elite gatherings and uncovers shocking evidence of his illegal activities. As Kyla exposes the truth, she faces intense scrutiny and threats, yet remains resolute in her mission. The investigation's fallout transforms the city, bringing justice to the corrupt and sparking a vital dialogue on racial discrimination and integrity. Kyla's courageous efforts highlight the power of one individual to drive systemic change. If you enjoyed this story and want to read more gripping tales of courage, justice, and transformation, don't forget to subscribe and like. Your support helps us continue to bring powerful narratives to life. Join us on this journey and stay tuned for more stories that inspire and challenge. La Belle Époque was a world unto itself, a realm of luxury and exclusivity, where the city's elite congregated to indulge in both opulence and status. The restaurant's facade was an architectural marvel, with its ornate gold trim and grand entrance flanked by tall, polished marble columns. As Kyla Mitchell stepped in through the doors, she was enveloped in a realm of rich tapestries, ambient lighting, and the subtle hum of classical music. The interior was a study in extravagance. High ceilings were adorned with magnificent crystal chandeliers, each reflecting light in a dazzling display of rainbow hues. The walls were lined with dark mahogany panels, intricately carved with patterns that spoke of a bygone era of elegance. Plush velvet drapes in deep burgundy cascaded from tall windows, framing the view of the bustling city streets below. The floors were polished marble, a smooth expanse that mirrored the luxurious environment. Kyla, with her graceful stride and poised demeanor, moved seamlessly through this extravagant setting. Her uniform, a crisp white blouse paired with a sleek black apron, was immaculate. Every detail of her attire was designed to convey professionalism and attention to detail. Her shoes were polished to a mirror shine, each step echoing softly against the marble floor. Despite the grandeur surrounding her, Kyla's presence was understated yet commanding, a testament to her years of experience and unwavering dedication. Her role as a waitress was not just about serving food. It was about navigating the complex dynamics of the restaurant's clientele. As she made her way to the kitchen to retrieve an order, she overheard snippets of conversation from the patrons. Their voices, though subdued, carried an air of entitlement and self-importance. Words like deal, portfolio, and investment floated through the air, hinting at the high-stakes world in which they operated. The patrons of La Belle Époque were a mix of the city's most influential figures: politicians, business magnates, and celebrities. Each table was a microcosm of power, where deals were made and alliances were forged over fine dining. Kyla had always been keenly aware of the disparity between her world and theirs. While they enjoyed the fruits of their success, she worked tirelessly to ensure their dining experience was flawless. Among the restaurant's elite, Mr. Robert Hartman was a towering figure. His name was synonymous with influence and authority. A man in his late 50s, Hartman had built his empire from the ground up. His reputation was a complex tapestry of charisma and ruthlessness. Hartman was known for his meticulous attention to detail, a trait that extended to every aspect of his business. His presence at La Belle Époque was a daily reminder of the power dynamics at play. Kyla had learned to navigate Hartman's moods with caution. His temper was as volatile as his charm was disarming. On any given day, he could shift from being a charismatic leader to a demanding tyrant. Tonight, as she glanced at his table from across the room, she saw him surrounded by a group of well-dressed individuals engaged in animated conversation. His gestures were grandiose, his laughter booming, a stark contrast to the subdued atmosphere of the rest of the restaurant. Kyla approached Hartman's table with a tray of drinks, her face a mask of professional composure. "Mr. Hartman, your drinks as requested." Hartman looked up, his gaze cold and assessing. "Finally. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about us." The bite in his tone was unmistakable. Kyla's heart sank, but she maintained her calm. "I'm sorry for the delay. It's been quite a busy night." Hartman's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized her. "Busy or not, it's no excuse for poor service. I expect better from you." The condescension in his voice was clear, and the surrounding patrons' eyes flickered towards Kyla. She could feel their judgment, a mix of curiosity and amusement. Kyla's smile remained unwavering, though she could sense the weight of their gaze. "I understand, Mr. Hartman. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." As she walked away, she overheard Hartman's muttered comment to his guests. "This is why I don't like having new staff. They can never get it right." The comment was not only a reflection of his dissatisfaction, but also a clear indication of his disdain for her. Kyla had faced many such moments of subtle and overt prejudice. Hartman's treatment of her was a daily reminder of the racial and class biases that pervaded the restaurant. Kyla's role at La Belle Époque was more than just a job. It was part of a larger mission. She was an undercover FBI agent tasked with uncovering corruption within the city's elite. The restaurant, with its intricate network of influence and power, was the perfect setting for her investigation. Her position allowed her to observe and document the activities that took place behind the polished facade. As the evening progressed, Kyla continued her duties with meticulous attention. She served meals, addressed complaints, and ensured that each patron's experience was up to the restaurant's high standards. The pace was relentless, and the demands were unending. Each interaction was a balancing act between maintaining professionalism and enduring the subtle prejudices that came with her role. The night's challenges were compounded by the weight of her undercover mission. Every task she performed, every interaction she had, was part of a larger plan to expose the corruption that lay hidden beneath the surface. Kyla's resilience and dedication were tested daily, but she remained steadfast in her commitment to the truth. As the restaurant's lights dimmed and the last guests departed, Kyla finished her shift and prepared to leave. The contrast between the opulence of La Belle Époque and the simplicity of her apartment was stark. Yet, it was in the quiet of her home that she found moments of reflection and resolve. Her mission was far from over. The corruption she sought to uncover was deeply entrenched, and the path to justice was fraught with obstacles. But for now, Kyla took solace in the progress she had made, and the knowledge that each day brought her closer to exposing the truth. As she closed the door behind her and walked away from the world of glitter and pretense, Kyla's thoughts were already focused on the next step of her investigation. The journey ahead was uncertain, but her determination was unwavering. The fight against corruption and prejudice was one she was prepared to continue, no matter the cost. The following weeks at La Belle Époque were a whirlwind of relentless activity for Kyla Mitchell. Each day presented new challenges, both in the form of demanding patrons and the intricate dance of her undercover investigation. Despite the facade of luxury that surrounded her, Kyla remained focused on her mission, to uncover the corruption hidden within the restaurant's walls. One evening, as Kyla meticulously organized the silverware and prepared for the dinner rush, she noticed a new face among the staff. A young woman named Rachel had joined the team. Rachel was bright-eyed and enthusiastic, eager to make a good impression. Her presence was a breath of fresh air amidst the usual tension and demands. Kyla took her under her wing, offering guidance and support. "Rachel, don't worry about the rush," Kyla said. with a reassuring smile. "Just stay calm, and everything will be fine. If you need anything, just ask." Rachel's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, Kyla. I really appreciate it." As the night progressed, Kyla observed the interactions between the staff and the patrons. Rachel's eagerness to please seemed to be met with mixed reactions. Some guests were appreciative, while others took advantage of her inexperience. Kyla couldn't help but notice how Rachel's mistakes were met with harsh criticism, while similar errors by more seasoned staff were often overlooked. The dynamics of power and prejudice were evident in every interaction. Kyla was acutely aware of the double standards that existed, and she felt a pang of sympathy for Rachel. It was a harsh reminder of the challenges she herself faced, as well as the broader issues of discrimination that pervaded their environment. The evening took a turn for the worse when one of the restaurant's most influential patrons, Mr. Gregory Denton, arrived. Denton was a wealthy businessman known for his abrasive demeanor and sharp tongue. He had a reputation for making unreasonable demands and showing little regard for the staff. His presence often caused a ripple of unease among the employees. Tonight, Denton was particularly irritable. His dissatisfaction with the service was evident from the moment he walked in. He scowled at the decor, grumbled about the temperature of his wine, and openly criticized the menu. Kyla, who was assigned to his table, approached with her usual professionalism. "Good evening, Mr. Denton. How may I assist you tonight?" she asked, trying to mask the tension in her voice. Denton looked up, his expression a mixture of contempt and annoyance. "Finally, it's about time someone attended to me. I've been waiting forever." Kyla remained composed. "I apologize for the delay. What can I get for you?" Denton's gaze was unrelenting. "I want the filet mignon, cooked medium rare, and make sure it's perfect. I don't want any excuses." Kyla nodded, taking note of his request. "I'll make sure it's prepared to your liking." As she moved away, Kyla overheard Denton muttering to his companion, "This place used to be top-notch. Now, it's just another overpriced eatery." The comment was a clear reflection of his disdain for the restaurant, and by extension, the staff. Kyla knew that Denton's dissatisfaction was more about asserting his power than the actual quality of the service. His words were a reminder of the harsh reality she faced daily, one where her worth was often judged by those in power, regardless of her performance. The evening continued with a series of escalating demands from Denton. He complained about every aspect of his meal, from the seasoning to the presentation. Each time Kyla approached his table, she did so with a tight smile and a measured tone. Her professionalism was tested repeatedly, but she managed to keep her composure. Rachel, observing the situation from a distance, looked visibly distressed. Her initial excitement had given way to anxiety as she witnessed the treatment Kyla endured. Kyla decided to intervene, stepping in to shield Rachel from the brunt of Denton's ire. "Rachel, why don't you take a short break?" Kyla suggested gently. "I've got this covered." Rachel's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Kyla. I didn't know how to handle him." As the night wore on, Kyla managed to placate Denton to some extent, but the damage had already been done. The experience was a stark reminder of the precarious balance she had to maintain between her undercover role and the daily indignities of working in such an environment. Later that evening, as the restaurant began to empty out, Kyla found a moment of solitude in the staff break room. The space was small and utilitarian, a far cry from the opulence of the dining area. She took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment to unwind. The emotional toll of the night weighed heavily on her shoulders. Rachel joined her, her face reflecting a mixture of concern and gratitude. "I'm really sorry about what happened with Mr. Denton. I feel like I should have done more." Kyla shook her head, offering a reassuring smile. "You did nothing wrong. Mr. Denton's behavior was unacceptable, but it's not your fault. We're all just doing our best to get through the night. Rachel nodded, though the worry in her eyes remained. I just don't understand why he was so rude, Kyla sighed, understanding all too well. Some people think that money gives them the right to treat others poorly. It's a hard lesson, but it's part of working in a place like this. As the night came to a close, Kyla prepared to leave. The restaurant's luxurious facade was now a stark contrast to the exhaustion she felt. The evening's events had only reinforced the systemic issues she was determined to expose. Her commitment to the mission remained unwavering, despite the personal challenges she faced. Walking out into the cool night air, Kyla reflected on the evening's events. The conflicts and confrontations were a reminder of the resilience required to navigate such a high-stakes environment. She was determined to continue her work, knowing that each challenge was a step closer to uncovering the truth. With a deep breath, Kyla stepped away from La Belle Époque, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The fight against corruption and prejudice was far from over, but Kyla's resolve was stronger than ever. The rhythm of La Belle Époque's daily operations had become a predictable pattern for Kyla Mitchell, yet each day presented new nuances in the intricate dance of power and privilege. As Kyla continued her undercover work, the stakes grew higher, and her resolve was tested with increasing frequency. The facade of luxury and exclusivity masked a world fraught with systemic corruption and racial discrimination. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a warm glow over the city, Kyla prepared for what she knew would be a particularly challenging shift. The restaurant was hosting a high-profile charity gala, and the guest list was a who's who of the city's elite. The air was thick with anticipation and the promise of grand gestures and lavish donations. The gala was a spectacle of wealth and grandeur. The main dining area was transformed into a glittering ballroom adorned with elegant floral arrangements, shimmering tablecloths, and crystal chandeliers. The guests were dressed in their finest, their laughter and conversation filling the room with a festive ambiance. The event was a celebration of generosity, yet the undercurrents of power and privilege were ever present. Kyla had been assigned to manage the special section reserved for the event's most esteemed guests. As she moved through the room, she overheard snippets of conversation that highlighted the disparity between the public image of charity and the reality of the wealthy elite's attitudes. "Isn't it wonderful to give back?" one guest remarked, her voice dripping with insincerity. Another responded with a dismissive tone. "Yes, but I'm more interested in the tax write-offs than the actual impact." The contrast between their words and the lavish setting was jarring. Kyla's role was not just to serve, but to observe, and she could sense the hypocrisy beneath the surface. The gala was a testament to the performative nature of charity among the wealthy, a stark reminder of the disconnect between their public personas and private realities. As the evening progressed, Kyla was approached by a man who exuded both arrogance and authority. He was introduced as Mr. Jonathan Hargrove, a major donor and influential figure in the city's business and political circles. Hargrove was known for his extensive contributions to various causes, yet his reputation for ruthlessness was equally well known. "Miss Mitchell, I presume?" Hargrove said, his voice smooth but laced with a subtle edge. "I must say, the service here is exemplary tonight." Kyla forced a smile, knowing that Hargrove's praise was as much a performance as the gala itself. "Thank you, Mr. Hargrove. We're pleased to hear that." Hargrove's gaze lingered on Kyla, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You know, it's refreshing to see someone who takes their job so seriously, especially in a place like this." Kyla's instincts told her that Hargrove's interest was more than superficial. "I appreciate that, Mr. Hargrove. We strive to provide the best experience for our guests." As the conversation continued, Kyla couldn't shake the feeling that Hargrove's attention was part of a larger scheme. His presence at the gala was no coincidence, and she knew that his actions could be linked to the corruption she was investigating. The evening's events were about to take a turn that would further complicate her mission. Later that night, as Kyla was clearing plates and attending to the guests, she noticed a commotion at one of the tables. A dispute had arisen between a guest and a member of the staff, and the scene was quickly escalating. Kyla moved closer, her professional instincts kicking in. The argument involved a wealthy donor, Mrs. Evelyn Carlyle, who was visibly upset, her voice, filled with indignation, carried across the room. "I demand to speak to the manager. This is unacceptable." The staff member, a young man named Tom, was clearly flustered. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're doing our best, but we've been incredibly busy tonight." Mrs. Carlyle's anger was palpable. "Busy or not, this is a charity event. We're supposed to be treated with the utmost respect." Kyla stepped in, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos. "Is there a problem I can help resolve, Mrs. Carlyle?" Mrs. Carlyle turned her ire towards Kyla. "Yes, there is. This young man has been nothing but rude, and the service tonight has been dreadful. I expect better from this establishment." Kyla addressed Tom with a reassuring tone. "Tom, why don't you take a moment to step back? I'll handle this." As Tom left, Kyla focused her attention on Mrs. Carlyle. "I'm sorry for any inconvenience you've experienced. Let me see how I can make things right." The conversation continued, with Mrs. Carlyle demanding more than Kyla could realistically provide. The situation was a microcosm of the larger issues at play. Wealth and privilege were used to demand special treatment and to belittle those in lower positions. In the midst of the confrontation, Kyla noticed a familiar face approaching, Mr. Jonathan Hargrove. His presence added another layer to the situation, and Kyla realized that his interest in her was far from over. Hargrove joined the conversation, his demeanor as smooth as ever. "Is there a problem here, Miss Mitchell?" Kyla glanced at him, trying to gauge his intentions. "Mr. Hargrove, I'm addressing Mrs. Carlyle's concerns. I'll ensure her issues are resolved promptly." Hargrove's eyes held a glint of amusement. "I trust you'll handle it well. After all, it's not every day that one gets to witness such a display of passion." The interaction between Hargrove and Carlyle highlighted the delicate balance of power and influence. Hargrove's involvement seemed designed to escalate the situation further, perhaps to test Kyla's resolve or to gauge her response. As the night drew to a close, Kyla reflected on the events that had unfolded. The charity gala had been a stark reminder of the disparities that existed within the world of the elite. The masks of civility and generosity often concealed deeper currents of power and prejudice. Kyla left La Belle Epoque with a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges she faced were significant, but each encounter provided valuable insights into the corruption she was determined to expose. Her commitment to the mission was unwavering, and she knew that the road ahead would require both resilience and strategic acumen. Walking through the city streets, Kyla contemplated the evening's events. The fight against corruption and prejudice was far from over, but she remained steadfast in her resolve. Each day brought new obstacles, but Kyla was prepared to face them head-on. The days following the charity gala were a blur of activity for Kyla Mitchell. La Belle Epoque continued to operate with its usual veneer of sophistication. But beneath the surface, Kyla's investigation into the corruption that plagued the restaurant was gaining momentum. Her encounters with the elite patrons had provided valuable insights, but the real breakthrough was still elusive. One afternoon, as Kyla prepared for another busy shift, she received a cryptic message on her phone. The text was from an anonymous sender and read, "Meet me at the alley behind La Belle Epoque at midnight. I have information you need." The message was both intriguing and alarming. Kyla knew that meeting with an unknown contact could be risky, but the potential for uncovering crucial information outweighed the dangers. She decided to proceed with caution. As the clock struck midnight, Kyla made her way to the alley behind the restaurant. The area was dimly lit and deserted, with only the distant hum of traffic breaking the silence. Kyla's senses were on high alert as she waited for her contact. A figure emerged from the shadows, clad in a dark coat and hat. The person's face was obscured, but their posture conveyed a sense of urgency. "Miss Mitchell?" the figure asked, their voice muffled. Kyla nodded. "Yes, I'm here. What information do you have?" The figure glanced around nervously before speaking. "I've been following the activities of some of the restaurant's top patrons. What I've discovered is disturbing. There's a network of corruption involving several high-profile individuals, including Mr. Jonathan Hargrove and Mrs. Evelyn Carlyle." Kyla's interest was piqued. "What kind of corruption are we talking about?" The figure hesitated before continuing. "There are illegal dealings, embezzlement, and money laundering. Hargrove and Carlyle are at the center of it all. They've been using their influence to cover their tracks and manipulate others." Kyla listened intently, her mind racing with the implications of the revelation. "Do you have any concrete evidence?" The figure handed Kyla a folder. "This contains documents and communications that link them to the corrupt activities. Be careful. They have eyes everywhere." Kyla took the folder, her resolve strengthening. "Thank you for this information. I'll take it from here." As the figure disappeared back into the shadows, Kyla examined the contents of the folder. The documents were detailed and included financial records, emails, and internal communications. It was clear that the corruption ran deep and involved multiple layers of deceit. The next step in Kyla's investigation was to verify the authenticity of the evidence and build a comprehensive case against the individuals involved. She knew that exposing the corruption would be a formidable task, but the information she had received was a crucial piece of the puzzle. Over the following days, Kyla worked diligently to analyze the documents and cross-reference them with other sources. Her efforts were met with increasing resistance from the restaurant's management and patrons, who seemed to sense that something was amiss. The subtle hostility she faced was a testament to the power and influence of those she was up against. One afternoon, Kyla was summoned to the office of Mr. Richard Collins, the restaurant's general manager. Collins was a portly man with a stern demeanor, known for his rigid adherence to the restaurant's standards and his unwavering loyalty to the elite patrons. "Miss Mitchell, please have a seat," Collins said, his tone brusque. Kyla took her place across from his desk, her demeanor calm. "Mr. Collins, how can I assist you?" Collins leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "I've noticed that you've been quite involved in the recent activities here. Is there something you'd like to share?" Kyla maintained her composure. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Collins. What seems to be the issue?" Collins's expression hardened. "There have been complaints about your performance. Some patrons feel that you're not meeting their expectations." Kyla raised an eyebrow. "I've done my best to provide excellent service and address any concerns promptly." Collins' gaze did not waver. "I trust you'll continue to uphold the restaurant's standards. We have a reputation to maintain, and we can't afford any disruptions." The veiled threat in Collins' words was clear. Kyla understood that her investigation was causing ripples within the restaurant's power structure. The pressure to conform was mounting, but Kyla was determined to press on. That evening, Kyla met with Rachel, the young waitress who had recently joined the staff. Rachel had become a confidant and a source of support. Her empathy and kindness, a welcome respite from the challenges Kyla faced. "I've been thinking about everything that's been happening," Rachel said, her voice filled with concern. "It's like there's this whole other world behind the scenes." Kyla nodded. "Yes, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. But we're getting closer to uncovering the truth." Rachel's expression was one of determination. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. Kyla appreciated Rachel's offer, but she knew that involving her in the investigation could put her at risk. I appreciate your support, Rachel. For now, just keep your head down and focus on your work. As Kyla continued her investigation, she remained vigilant and focused. The evidence she had obtained was a crucial step towards exposing the corruption, but the road ahead was fraught with challenges. The restaurant's environment was a reflection of the broader issues of power and privilege, and Kyla was committed to revealing the truth, no matter the cost. With each passing day, Kyla's determination grew stronger. The fight against corruption and racial discrimination was far from over, but she was ready to face the obstacles that lay ahead. The journey was arduous, but Kyla was resolute in her mission to bring justice and transparency to La Belle Époque. As Kyla Mitchell delved deeper into her investigation, the pressure from both the restaurant's management and the elite patrons intensified. Her undercover role had become increasingly precarious, with each day presenting new challenges and threats. The corruption she sought to expose was deeply entrenched, and the stakes had never been higher. One evening, Kyla arrived at La Belle Époque to find the atmosphere tense. Whispers of discontent among the staff and subtle glances from patrons indicated that something was amiss. The restaurant's usual veneer of sophistication was overshadowed by a sense of unease. Kyla's shift began with a series of routine tasks, but the undercurrents of tension were impossible to ignore. The staff seemed on edge, their interactions marked by a palpable anxiety. Kyla couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. Midway through the evening, a sudden commotion erupted in the dining area. Kyla moved swiftly to investigate, her instincts alert. The source of the disturbance was none other than Mr. Jonathan Hargrove, who had arrived at the restaurant accompanied by a group of influential associates. Hargrove's presence was commanding, and his demeanor was unmistakably assertive. He was engaged in a heated argument with a member of the staff, his voice raised and filled with anger. The scene had drawn the attention of other patrons, their curiosity piqued by the drama unfolding before them. Kyla approached the scene, her expression composed. "Mr. Hargrove, is there a problem?" Hargrove turned to face Kyla, his expression one of barely contained fury. "This service is unacceptable. I demand to speak to the manager immediately." Kyla remained calm. "I'll be happy to assist you. Please follow me." As Kyla guided Hargrove to a quieter area, she noticed that his associates were watching intently, their expressions reflecting a mix of amusement and disdain. The situation was a clear display of Hargrove's power and influence, a reminder of the challenges Kyla faced in her investigation. In the manager's office, Kyla confronted Hargrove with a measured tone. "Mr. Hargrove, what seems to be the issue?" Hargrove's anger was palpable. "The service tonight has been nothing short of disastrous. I've been kept waiting, and the quality of the food is far below expectations." Kyla listened attentively, knowing that Hargrove's complaints were likely a pretext for something more significant. "I apologize for any inconvenience. We'll address your concerns immediately." Hargrove's gaze was piercing. "I've been hearing rumors about your involvement in this establishment. Are you trying to undermine us?" Kyla met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to ensure that our patrons receive the best service. If there's an issue, I'll make sure it's resolved." The exchange was a clear indication that Hargrove was aware of Kyla's investigation. The veiled threat in his words was a stark reminder of the risks she faced. Despite the mounting pressure, Kyla remained focused on her mission. Later that evening, as Kyla worked her shift, she noticed a pattern of increasingly hostile interactions from the patrons. The subtle jabs and dismissive comments were a reflection of the power dynamics at play. The sense of entitlement and privilege was evident in every encounter. At the end of her shift, Kyla received another anonymous message. The text read, Meet me at the park across the street at midnight. I have more information. The message was a welcome opportunity to gather additional evidence. Kyla resolved to meet with the contact, knowing that the risk was worth the potential reward. As midnight approached, Kyla made her way to the park. The area was quiet and dimly lit, with only the distant hum of traffic breaking the silence. Kyla's senses were on high alert as she waited for her contact. A figure emerged from the shadows, their face obscured by a hood. "Miss Mitchell?" the figure asked, their voice muffled. Kyla nodded. "Yes, I'm here. What information do you have?" The figure handed Kyla a folder. "These documents are crucial. They contain evidence of a secret meeting between Mr. Hargrove and other key figures in the corruption network. It's scheduled to take place soon." Kyla examined the folder, her mind racing with the implications. "Thank you for this information. I'll make sure it's used appropriately." As the figure disappeared into the night, Kyla felt a renewed sense of determination. The evidence she had received was a significant breakthrough, providing a tangible link between Hargrove and the corruption network. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as Kyla prepared to act on the new information. The secret meeting mentioned in the documents was scheduled to take place at an undisclosed location, and Kyla knew that it was an opportunity she could not afford to miss. As she worked to gather additional evidence and prepare for the meeting, Kyla remained vigilant. The challenges she faced were considerable, but her commitment to exposing the truth and bringing justice to La Belle Époque remained unwavering. The fight against corruption and racial discrimination was far from over, but Kyla was ready to face whatever obstacles lay ahead. Her resolve was strengthened by the knowledge that she was getting closer to uncovering the truth and holding those responsible accountable. With each passing day, Kyla's determination grew stronger. The stakes were high, but Kyla was prepared to see the mission through to the end. The journey was arduous, but the pursuit of justice was a cause worth fighting for. The time had come for Kyla Mitchell to confront the heart of the corruption that had plagued La Belle Époque. Armed with the evidence she had painstakingly gathered, Kyla was ready to take decisive action. The secret meeting between Mr. Jonathan Hargrove and other key figures in the corruption network was a critical opportunity to expose the truth. The meeting was scheduled to take place at a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city. The location was chosen for its privacy and exclusivity, reflecting the secrecy of the dealings that would unfold within its walls. Kyla knew that gaining access to the estate would be a significant challenge, but she was determined to see the investigation through. On the night of the meeting, Kyla arrived at the estate under the cover of darkness. The property was heavily guarded, with security personnel stationed at key points around the perimeter. Kyla carefully navigated the grounds, using her knowledge of the layout to avoid detection. Once inside, Kyla found a vantage point from which she could observe the meeting. The room was lavishly decorated, a stark contrast to the illegal activities that were about to take place. The attendees included some of the city's most powerful and influential figures, their conversations a mix of business and strategy. Kyla's heart raced as she recorded the proceedings, capturing crucial details that would provide irrefutable evidence of the corruption network. The meeting was a revelation, exposing the extent of the illicit activities and the lengths to which the participants were willing to go to protect their interests. Among the key figures present were Mr. Jonathan Hargrove, Mrs. Evelyn Carlyle, and several other prominent individuals. Their discussions were candid and revealing, shedding light on the inner workings of the corruption network and the ways in which they manipulated and exploited others. As the meeting progressed, Kyla could sense the gravity of the situation. The conversations revealed a complex web of deceit and greed, with each participant playing a role in the larger scheme. The evidence she was collecting was crucial to dismantling the network and holding those responsible accountable. Despite the high stakes, Kyla remained focused and composed. Her dedication to the mission was unwavering, and she knew that the information she had gathered would be instrumental in bringing about change. The meeting eventually concluded, and Kyla made her way out of the estate, her mind racing with the implications of what she had witnessed. The evidence she had collected was comprehensive and compelling, providing a clear picture of the corruption that had plagued La Belle Époque. In the days that followed, Kyla worked tirelessly to compile and organize the evidence. The task was monumental, but the significance of the information drove her forward. She knew that exposing the corruption would be a formidable challenge, but she was prepared to face it head-on. Kyla's efforts culminated in a detailed report that outlined the extent of the corruption and the key figures involved. The report was submitted to the appropriate authorities, marking a critical step in the pursuit of justice. As the investigation unfolded, the impact of Kyla's work became evident. The evidence she had provided led to a series of investigations and legal actions against those implicated in the corruption network. The fallout was significant, with several high-profile figures facing legal consequences and the operations of La Belle Époque undergoing a thorough review. The process of exposing the corruption was not without its challenges. Kyla faced resistance from those who sought to protect their interests and undermine her efforts. Yet her determination and resolve proved to be a powerful force for change. In the aftermath of the investigation, Kyla reflected on the journey she had undertaken. The fight against corruption and racial discrimination had been arduous, but the results were a testament to the power of perseverance and commitment. La Belle Époque underwent significant changes as a result of the investigation. The restaurant's management was overhauled, and new policies were implemented to address the issues of racial discrimination and unethical practices. The changes were a positive step towards creating a more inclusive and equitable environment. Kyla's role in the investigation had a lasting impact on both La Belle Époque and the broader community. Her courage and dedication had exposed the truth and brought about meaningful change, demonstrating the importance of standing up for what is right. As Kyla moved forward, she knew that the fight for justice was ongoing. The challenges she faced were a reminder of the need for vigilance and perseverance in the face of adversity. Her experience had strengthened her resolve and deepened her commitment to advocating for those who faced discrimination and injustice. With a sense of accomplishment and a renewed focus on her mission, Kyla continued her work, driven by the belief that change was possible and that every effort contributed to a more just and equitable world. The aftermath of the investigation into La Belle Époque was a whirlwind of activity. The exposure of the corruption network had sent shockwaves through the city, leading to widespread media coverage and public outcry. Kyla Mitchell, having played a pivotal role in uncovering the truth, found herself at the center of both praise and scrutiny. The fallout from the investigation had far-reaching consequences. The high-profile figures implicated in the scandal faced legal repercussions, their reputations tarnished and their influence diminished. The restaurant underwent a significant overhaul, with new management installed and policies implemented to address the issues of racial discrimination and unethical practices. Kyla's involvement in the investigation had garnered attention from both the media and the public. She was hailed as a hero by some, while others criticized her methods and motives. Despite the mixed reactions, Kyla remained focused on the impact of her work rather than the personal accolades or criticism. One day, Kyla received an invitation to a press conference where key figures involved in the investigation would address the public. The event was to be held at a downtown convention center, and Kyla was both apprehensive and curious about what would transpire. As she arrived at the venue, Kyla noticed the bustling activity surrounding the event. The media presence was substantial, with reporters and cameras positioned to capture every moment. Kyla took a deep breath and entered the convention center, her mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming revelations. The press conference began with a series of statements from the authorities and legal representatives involved in the case. They outlined the details of the investigation, the evidence that had been uncovered, and the steps taken to address the corruption at La Belle Époque. Kyla was introduced as a key contributor to the investigation, her role highlighted as instrumental in bringing the truth to light. She took the stage amidst a flurry of flashbulbs and cameras, her demeanor calm but resolute. During her speech, Kyla spoke about the importance of transparency and accountability. She addressed the issues of racial discrimination and corruption, emphasizing the need for systemic change and continued vigilance. "The fight against injustice and corruption is not over," Kyla stated. "What we've accomplished here is a step towards a more equitable society, but we must remain committed to addressing these issues wherever they arise." Her words resonated with many in the audience, and the press conference concluded with a sense of cautious optimism. The revelations had sparked a broader conversation about racial discrimination and the power dynamics at play in influential institutions. As the event came to a close, Kyla found herself approached by several individuals, eager to express their support and gratitude. Among them was a representative from a prominent civil rights organization who offered to collaborate on future initiatives aimed at combating discrimination and promoting social justice. Kyla was grateful for the support and opportunities presented to her. The investigation had been a challenging and transformative experience, and she was determined to leverage her newfound platform to effect positive change. In the weeks that followed, Kyla continued to work on projects related to social justice and anti-corruption efforts. Her involvement in the La Belle Époque case had opened doors to new avenues for advocacy and activism, and she was committed to using her voice and influence to make a difference. The journey had been arduous, but the results were a testament to the power of perseverance and dedication. Kyla's efforts had exposed deep-seated corruption and brought about meaningful change, setting a precedent for future endeavors in the fight against injustice. As Kyla looked back on the investigation, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The challenges she had faced and the obstacles she had overcome had strengthened her resolve and deepened her commitment to advocating for those who faced discrimination and injustice. With a renewed sense of purpose, Kyla continued her work, driven by the belief that change was possible and that every effort contributed to a more just and equitable world. The journey was far from over, but Kyla was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in her mission and determined to make a lasting impact.